The screen is telling me I'm live, and I'm drinking from a nerd cup. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to wait to see if there's actually anyone watching, and then I'll start playing a song. Because I've got the guitar in the hand, I've had a practice, I've got the tab up on my computer screen, but at the moment it doesn't look like anyone's watching. But it's Friday night, it's time to party. The eye has come up, and the eye says 0. Federico Latini wrote at 7:34. Hello. That was 25 minutes late. And what's he done? He's logged off. There's no one here. I'm alone. I mean, I put an advert up on Twitter and that. This has been scheduled for weeks. And no, 3 people. Oh my God, 3 people. All right. Hello. You can write in the chat and it'll come up on my screen. If you've got any questions for me, just pop them in there. I've got a few from my meager beggings on the internet. And I'm going to start off by playing a song. I hope you enjoy it. This is by a rock... Oh, 2 people have gone away. How depressing. This is by a rock band called Ween. This is from their last album, La Cucaracha. And it's a strange love song. And it's called Object. I hope you enjoy it. You're just an object to me. I'd like to get to know you better. Based you across my body. You're just an object to me. You're just a piece of me. And I am a butcher. I love you better. Love you forever. You're just an object to me. Hang on. Why sit in the shade? Drink while we made from a lover's cup. Dreams don't always come when you fall asleep. You're just an object to me. I'm gonna do something wrong. Nobody's gonna like it. But I got my pride, and my time isn't free. You're just an object to me. You're just an object to me. I feel a little better. They found your sweater. You're just an object to me. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I'm going to close that window and I'm going to come back here. So, what a wonderful evening. There's 2 people still watching. I assume that's Matt and David. Good evening. I'm happy you're here. I wonder if anyone else will join us. Meeple Overboard is here, looking and sounding good. Thank you very much. The sounding might be true. I'm not sure about the looking. I don't market myself with my looks. I'm a person of substance. Crappy substance, but substance nevertheless. All right, let's get to some questions, shall we? So, bear with me a second. I should have brought this up earlier. This is terrible organization. No, that's not that one. Give me a second. Bang, bang. Ding, 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 ding. All right, so Anthony Boydell, who isn't watching, unfortunately, but I'm sure he'll pop on at some point. What theme would you design a board game around, and what type of mechanisms would you include? Now, I've got... Oh, Sam's there. Hello. And John Shackleton, good evening. I think these numbers that are up on the thing are lying. It says 3 people, but there must be more than 3 people, right? Anyway, so the question is, what board game would I design? What theme would I design a board game around, and what mechanisms would it have? Well, the thing is, the second part of that question is the key, isn't it? You know what I mean? If you can think of that, then you've got the game. But... So I've had this idea swirling around my head for years now. So I actually have... So I want to design 2 games at the moment. The first one I'm actually going to try and design is a trick-taking game. And this game doesn't have a theme. I've given myself a restriction that there are no suits in the game. So there are no suits. It's a trick-taking game without suits. And that's kind of as far as I've got, but I think there's going to be some kind of bidding idea where people bid to decide what happens with the cards or something. So that's themeless. That's a trick-taking game. And I'm going to sit down over the weekend and I'm going to try and actually work out something to do with that. Because I really want to design a game. I want one game. If I can get one game published, that's good enough for me. But I've had another, and this I would imagine to be a sort of biggish Euro game. And I have the title already. The title is Off the Grid. And what it is each player has their own house. You start with a house, and it is probably a sort of bog standard British semi-detached house or detached house. And what you're trying to do during the game is become energy independent. You're trying to get off the grid. So I don't know what the mechanisms are, but the house starts fully sort of laden. So you start with everything on your player board, and throughout the game, using mechanisms or whatever, it's about removing stuff or adapting stuff. So, you have these things that are a heating system or a gas system, and you're able to flip it over and it becomes sort of geothermal heating that you dig yourself and that sort of stuff. And, you have your roof and you're able to add solar panels to it, but you take away sort of water mains and you dig yourself a well in the garden, that sort of, and the whole idea is that you become energy independent. The John Shackleton saying the good life, the board game. Exactly. I'm going to set it in Surbiton and it's going to be the good life, the board game. And I've had this idea rattling around in my head for probably 3 years now. But the problem is, the difficulty with designing a game is that you have to have talent and you have to be intelligent. Now, these things aren't necessarily the same thing. And the problem is I am neither. I'm neither intelligent nor talented. So the issue with that is it might take me a while to design a game. But that's the idea, off the grid. And I imagine it to be published by Lookout Games. It's that. Think of that. Think of the Clemens Franz artwork. Little, maybe Polyomino, though, it's a bit of a copy, isn't it? But little components, flat, pretty, with a central board where you can do stuff and all of that sort of stuff. And off the grid, it's going to be the best Euro game in the world, and it's going to win Kennerspiel des Jahres for 5 years in a row. So, Meeple Overboard has said, interesting, I've been rattling around an idea of a trick-taking game where cards have multiple suits, like a higher and lower value. That's really good. I could steal that. And David L has been saying, I've been toying with the idea of a game where you start with how many workers or pieces you start with, and the lower amount you start with, the better your starting resources or something. This is what lots of game designs are. When you ask someone what their game design are, it's explained like that. And you go, oh, right. The thing is, with anything, So I was writing for years. I was writing for years before I actually completed something. It took me. I finished a short story, I think, when I was 19, and then I didn't complete another one until I was 32. But I was writing all the time, and I was talking about writing all the time, and I was planning books all the time. And one thing I've learned about the creative process is that talking about it doesn't help. You've got to sit down and you've actually got to do it. And also, and this is quoting Richard from We're Not Wizards, you've got to be shit as well. I mean, you've got to be able to, this is the problem with being an adult, right? It's that fundamental issue with being an adult, which is we're scared to death of being shit. We think we're going to get ridiculed. The older you get, the more insecure you get, and the more fragile your ego becomes. And the littlest things start to dig in ever, ever deeper, even though you know that these things don't matter. And it is the crippling thing of people that they don't go ahead and do something because they're scared to death of looking like an idiot. This is why I live in Germany, and I know loads of people who probably speak German but have a real issue interacting with people in German because they're scared to death of making mistakes. They're scared to death of looking stupid. And the problem is with anything, whether it's learning a language, whether it's learning to write, whether it's learning to write music, whether it's designing a board game, I'm sure, though I've never actually done it, the issue is you need to go through a phase where you're crap. Most people. Some people fall on their feet and they're brilliant, but most of the time. So I interviewed Thomas Singh. So Sam says it starts at puberty. I'm not sure what that is. I'm not sure I've been through it, so I'll take her word for it. But yeah, this is the point, right? I was talking to Thomas Singh, who designed Ujima Flagget, The Crew. And he'd been toying around with this game for ages, and then, it just fell in his lap. He said he woke up and wrote down the design of The Crew and it barely changed. That's amazing, but it just doesn't happen. It almost never happens. You don't just, start something and it's instantly brilliant, especially writing. I can tell you that much. Matt Green says you don't need to be talented. You need to design games. Exactly. You get talented. Just start designing. The rest will follow. And I'm not sure that's entirely true necessarily. I don't think you're necessarily going to be brilliant, but you're certainly going to improve. Meeple Overboard says, though I've never watched the show, Jake the dog from Adventure Time said, sucking at something is the first step towards being sort of good at something, which is absolutely true. Although I was always, strangely enough, preternaturally brilliant at swearing. Amazing at it. I came out of the womb, I dropped an F-bomb in the nurse's face after she slapped my ass, cheeky bitch. And then I was just a natural. I read the BG. Matt Green says, I read the BGG comments from Maya Marsh when I wanted to feel shit about my ability to design games. Yeah. Criticism's a funny thing because getting criticized, I can't imagine it ever gets particularly any easier. And, and it's amazing. People can be super nice about you. And it's the one negative comment that spears your heart. Right, I'm going to play another song now. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat. It can be anything. I mean, I do reserve the right not to answer. The personal questions are fine. I'll tell you all about my sex life. But, I reserve the right to not answer questions that require knowledge to answer them. Okay, so this is a classic. By the Bee Gees, though it wasn't the Bee Gees, what made her famous? Hang on. I'm going to change the capo down. There we go. This is a classic. Baby, when I met you, there was peace unknown. Set out to find you with a fine-tooth comb. I was soft inside. There was something going on. You do something to me that I can't explain. Hold me closer and I feel no pain. Every beat of my heart, we got something going on. Tender love is blind. It requires a dedication. All this love we feel needs no conversation. We ride it together. From one lover to another. Islands and the stream, that is what we are. No one in between. How can we be wrong? Sail away with me to another world, and we rely on each other. From one lover to another. I can't live without you when the love has gone. Everything is nothing when you got no one, and you walk in the night, slowly losing sight of the real thing. But that won't happen to us, and we got no doubt. Too deep in love and we got no way out, and the message is clear. This could be the year of the real thing. No more will you cry, baby, I will hurt you never. Start and end as one, in love forever, and we ride it together. From one lover to another. Islands and the stream, that is what we are. No one in between. How can we be wrong? Sail away with me to another world, and we rely on each other. From one lover to another. Islands and the stream, that is what we are. No more in between. How can we be wrong? Sail away with me to another world, and we rely on each other. From one lover to another. Oh, the Bee Gees. The Bee Gees. That's the thing with the Bee Gees, you think, is that, you know, the 70s and the stupid flares and the really big high-pitched voices made them a bit of a meme and a bit of a joke. But my God, they wrote perfect songs, the Bee Gees. Absolutely perfect songs. Oh, people are talking to each other on my stream. No, they haven't. I don't. I'm rather annoyed about the Queen's Gambit as someone in Berlin who I'm not a big fan of is in the Queen's Gambit and got the gig and I didn't. All right, so Ben Tinney, I think he's in Australia. Penguinized asks me, what is your all-time favorite board game component? Cards, dice, wooden cucumbers? I think Tony bought a game with a butt plug as a component, if I remember correctly. What's the best component? It's difficult, isn't it? Because if I'm being honest, I mean, there's loads of cool components, and I'm beginning to get a little bit fatigued by every game just being the best componentry in the world. I remember when Scythe came out, right? And the reason everyone was cock-a-hoop over Scythe was because this was amazing. You just did, metal coins and these minis, although the minis aren't very good. And, all of this sort of stuff was absolutely astonishing. And now every game's like that. So I'm a little bit fatigued with it, but there are moments in your nascent gaming life, right? When you play Carcassonne for the first time, or one of those sort of games, and you get a meeple. It's a cliche, but God, it's classic. It evokes everything. The meeple is the blank canvas on which we paint our own assumptions about what the game is doing, which is what I think the problem is. And this is the same with art, right? Everything is. There's a problem with lots of things becoming too prescriptive, them filling in all the gaps for you. There are certain forms of art in which the consumer of the art is required to fill something in. And I think novels and games are very much like this. This is why, when people say, oh, God, the book was overwritten, there is this subconscious thing, I think, that people are thinking, you say too much. You're not allowing me to do my job as the reader, because I think a novel is a two-way street on the reader and the writer. The writer should write just enough. And that's why metaphor is such a wonderful device, because metaphors just open the world, and people see metaphors in different ways. My Essen piece, I was very happy with a sentence I wrote, and I don't subscribe to the Samuel Johnson thing. So Samuel Johnson said, if you write a good line, scrub it out, because he was a pompous arse. But I wrote this line, and it was a great metaphor. It was something like, it's as familiar as sliding on your winter coat for the first time when the air starts to breed crystals, which crystals is a great word. If you can put crystals in a sentence, I highly recommend it. It's a great word. And it evokes, without meticulously explaining what winter is like, it evokes it. And evocation is the goal, I think. And yeah, so Sam says, the passport from Pandemic Legacy Season 0. If you haven't played Pandemic Legacy Season 0, that component is brilliant. It's actually super practical, super thematic, super useful, and it evokes, again, it's evocation. I think that's the goal of art. And that's why when things are preachy, we have a problem with it. Because art should evoke and allow you to do the work. You should have an input into the art, not the art completely selling you. This is the difference between reading a book, a novel, and a textbook, right? You read a textbook for the information. You want the information. You read a novel to commune with the writer at some point, and you play a game to commune with the designer. And, Tony says he's a big fan of Lookout's standard game porn these days. Ball on top, swooping lines down to a healthy circular base. I fear he might be double entendring. But yeah, these classic... And Pandemic still uses the game porn, right? And it works. All of these... Minis with Eurogames, for some reason... So, I've played Blood Bowl. Blood Bowl is wonderful and feels like it needs the minis. Which is why, if you play Dogs of War, for instance, with those ornate busts from Cool Mini or not, it somehow feels wrong. Because there are certain games that demand that and certain games that don't, right? Meeple Overboard says that one of his favorite game components is the wooden cube for that reason. The cube is so evocative of board games. And if you can put just the slightest spin on the cube, and suddenly it transforms everything. There's a little game. There's a little game by a Czech designer, the original came out in the 2000s. The new one came out in 2015. It's a civilization game called Through the Ages, and the cubes in there are wonderful. They're so evocative, and the movement of the cubes and putting them there. And I start to think, and this is where games are wonderful. They build a scaffolding on which you lay the flesh and the skin, right? And I start to think of them as philosophers. I start to think of them as farmers, as miners, as soldiers. And because you have companies like Panda who can do all of this stuff, and they're trying to make money, so they encourage game companies to do all of this stuff. And then you have this sort of arms race where, a 20 euro game becomes an 80 euro game because you've got to have, solid brass testicles in it or whatever, And this, I guess I sound like a grumpy old bloke, and whatever floats your boat, but there are times when it works, and there are times where you just want the plain simplicity, the evocation of numbers. You know what I mean? A cube there represents this, and it's wonderful. Do we have another question? If you've got any questions, put them in the chat. So JY at Jonas, oh God, I'm going to mess this up. Yamakawa says, if you could live in any board game world, which would you live in? And my answer is Grand Austria Hotel, mostly because I want to eat cake and drink coffee and wine with all the people that appear in it. I've lived in that world. I assume the hotel he's talking about is the Sacher. The hotel in the game is the Hotel Sacher, which is on the corner of Kärntnerstrasse, just opposite from the opera in Vienna. And it's... And round the corner is Café Mozart, which, if you've ever seen The Third Man, is the cafe in The Third Man. And it is... Yeah, it's a wonderful place to be. You walk in and it feels like a sort of Victorian, Franz Josephen coffee house. And you can eat Sachertorte and drink a melange. And what I noticed, and I guess it's because it's the Hotel Sacher particularly, I would go to another coffee house in Vienna called Café Sperl, which was more of a townies, a locals place. But, it's weird. I'm from Britain, which is completely class-ridden. And you walk into a place like that in Britain, especially dressed the way I dress, and they wouldn't throw you out necessarily. Like, I don't know if Steve's still watching, but when we walked Hadrian's Wall, we were looking for a pub, and we found this pub, and it was no longer a pub. It had been transformed into a very sort of very bourgeois little cafe. But we thought, fuck it, we're here. I wanted a pint, but I'll have a cup of tea and a piece of cake instead. So we went in. And this might just be the huge chip on my shoulder, right? But I really got the impression that these conservative women behind the counter were looking at me. I don't know about Steve. I mean, Steve is a paragon of respectability, but looking at me and sort of saying, bloody hell, do we have to bring a slice of cake to this riffraff? And I found in Austria, but I never had that. Even in the poshest of places, I never felt that. I felt I could go anywhere, pretty much. And I went into the Hotel Sacher quite a bit, and Sachertorte. And Sachertorte is the most overrated cake in the world. You have to have it with whipped cream, otherwise it's dry. And for some reason, it has marmalade in it. It's a thick, dark chocolate cake with marmalade in it. It's rubbish. Have a Kardinalschnitte. It's much better. But the world I would like to live in. And this is lame, but as the older I become, the lamer I become, the more like Alan Partridge I become with every passing day. But it's sort of the Forgotten Realms in Dungeons and Dragons. I love it. I love going to these little medieval towns in Germany and in Europe. I went to a load of them in Austria. Go to Melk. Oh my God, Melk in Austria is quite astonishing. It was where they trapped Richard the Lionheart during some war or something. And I love, so again, me and Steve went to the oldie Jerusalem or something in Nottingham, which is a pub that's been carved into a cave, into a cliff face. And just, I love the old fashioned stuff. I mean, I'm drinking from a horn mug as we speak, and I love all of that. I would love to. I've been watching the best TV show in the world. The best TV show in the world is Forged in Fire. It is a reality TV competition show in which bladesmiths make swords, and it's all tremendously lame, but it's so much fun. I'd love to go to America and go to a Ren fair and see Americans try to be old-fashioned, because I'm sure it's hilarious, because Americans are hilarious, except when it's Donny T. So, next song. Now, you might get a bit of the... No, it's still in tune. That wasn't out of tune. That was just me playing badly. You might get a bit of peaking on the microphone here, because, Matt Green, great show, competitive forging. One of my greatest sadnesses is there was a brilliant show on the History Channel called Full Metal Jousting. And it was amazing, and it only ran for one season. And I can't imagine there's a lot of jousters around. That's probably the issue. But it was brilliant. Full Metal Jousting. What a tragedy that it was only one season. So, this is a song. There is an album that was written in the 90s by a band called Neutral Milk Hotel. And they're one of these absolutely astonishing bands that released one of the best albums ever written, and it sold about 4 copies. But of course, as is the nature of these things, it then went on to inspire basically every musician for the subsequent 20 years. And the sort of the sort of big tune on this album is Two-Headed Boy by Neutral Milk Hotel. And you might get a bit of clipping on the mic because it's quite a loud one. But this is Two-Headed Boy, Neutral Milk Hotel. Two-headed boys all floating in glass. The sun, it has passed, now it's blacker than black. I can hear as you tap on your jar. I am listening to hear where you are. I am listening to hear where you are. Two-headed boy, put on Sunday shoes and dance round the room to accordion keys with a needle that sings in your heart, catching signals that sound in the dark, catching signals that sound in the dark. We will take off our clothes and they'll be placing fingers through the notches in your spine. And when all is breaking, everything that you could keep inside, now you're rising, moving now, they just lay there in their climb. Two-headed boy with pulleys and weights, creating a radio play just for two in the parlor with the moon across her face. And through the music he sweetly displays silver speakers that sparkle all day.
made for his lover who's floating and choking with her hand across her face. And in the dark we will take off our clothes and they'll be placing fingers through the notches in your spine. And when all is breaking, everything that you could keep inside, now you're rising, moving now. They just lay there in their climb. I'm a two-headed boy. There's no reason to grieve. The world that you need is wrapped in gold and silver sleeves, left beneath Christmas trees in the snow. And I will take you and leave you alone, watching spirals of white softly flow over your eyelids, and all you did wait until the point where you let go. Dee 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 dee
That is a hard one to keep your breath. It's a hard one to keep your breath. But there we are. That's Two-Headed Boy from Neutral Milk Hotel. You should listen to the Neutral Milk Hotel album. It's absolutely astonishing. One of the albums of the 90s, and like 4 people bought it. Because if there's one thing that's true in life, it's that good stuff isn't popular stuff most of the time. All right, so Jeff Warrender, he's suggested a couple of Ween songs, and I tried to play them last night, and I couldn't play them, so I'm not playing them here. As for game questions, he says, what role does a game's visual presentation play for you in determining how interested you are in the game or how much you ultimately end up enjoying it? Now, this is a question, isn't it? Because what you're supposed to do when you're all arty and that, and you know, you're all, oh yeah, I'm a connoisseur of the hobby, is you're not supposed to be interested in the superficial. You're not supposed to be interested in the pictures and the things you touch. You're supposed to be interested in the deep stuff, the mechanisms, what the game does. And the thing is, kinda, but I am so drawn to games through the theme, through the art, and through the components. Now, they start to sort of melt away as you play the game and become less important. What they are is the filigree around it. They're the icing on the cake, to use a cliche. Inside is the meat of the cake, because you make cake with meat. And so it's important in making me think, I would really love to play that. And it's interesting because of my sort of predilections. When I see like a medieval painting cover, or I see a Clemens Franz box or something like that, I instantly think, this is the one. This is, I'm going to love it. But then I love all, like, if you look at David Cochard, he did the art for Dungeon Lords and Dungeon Pets and Alchemists. You know, I see a box by him and I think I really need to play this. And talking of Czech Games Edition, Under Falling Skies, I'm not a big solo game player, but the combination of the theme with the, you know, the box with the people in the war room and all of this, it's you know, super, super interesting. In the same way, I think part of the reason I have difficulty with war games is they have a sort of standard. They have a sort of standard graphic design style that I find very off-putting, and olive drab is a dull color, and of course a war game is just going to be dripping with olive drab, right? And so the art of a game is important. It's what brings you in. And I'm looking at my games now, and I look at Freedom and Freezer's games, and you think, that looks appealing. Childish, maybe, but appealing. And I'm looking at Slyville. Part of the reason Slyville is actually a very good game, and part of the reason I tried to wangle a review copy of Slyville is because I loved the cover. It sort of evoked sort of Ankh-Morpork, Terry Pratchett-esque sort of thing. And, the older I become, the more I sort of retreat into those familiar worlds. And I've decided to reread all the Pratchetts at the moment. And wow, I mean, the writing, the sentences are there right from the beginning, but he's not a novelist at the beginning. The Color of Magic really is just a series of quite poorly stitched together vignettes. And the step up from for the Color of Magic to the Light Fantastic is absolutely huge. The Light Fantastic is so much better, and the jokes are so much better. Yeah, and High Rise is absolutely glorious, and Heiko Günther is probably the best graphic designer in the industry, right? And you say, well, kind of what does graphic design mean? And then you see what Heiko does with graphic designing, and it's quite astonishing. And old Thule is wonderful too, And yeah, and I've got there's a British game designer. He's a bit of a bellend, but I've got one of his games here, Foothills. And you look at the cover of Foothills and you think, I want to play that. That looks fun. And I highly recommend it because it's bloody brilliant. Even though, both Tony and Ben are miserable sods. It's an absolutely excellent game. And I'm very jealous of Ben, whose first published design was published by Lookout. But then again, when Off the Grid comes out, then it's going to be that, isn't it? So David says, Pratchett's incredible. I only discovered him in the last few years, and wow, what a world he built. Yeah, and he gets better and better, and he tails off towards the end, but it's only sort of the last 2 or 3 books. I thought Unseen Academicals wasn't great, but yeah, I mean, it is familiar. And he's, I never met him, obviously, but I can imagine he must have been the nicest fucking guy in the world. And that really comes across in his writing. He's a person for whom decency is paramount. And it's not this sort of terrible bourgeois conception of decency. It's being a good, nice person. But if you look at his greatest analog, who's Captain Vimes is far from perfect as a human being. He's voluble. He's prone to anger. He's downright at times, prejudiced, but he's constantly fighting against it. He's constantly working to be better. And this is what's so interesting about, the way the internet works and why it's so sanctimonious is because it's just a bourgeois movement of people who are far from perfect themselves, telling other people they have to be perfect. Because I think the one thing I usually call it middle class, but I don't think middle class quite works, especially if you're speaking to Americans, because they have a different conception of what middle class means. But it's bourgeois. The internet is a bourgeois place. And bourgeois is all about superficiality. And it's all about the show of virtue rather than true virtue. And true virtue is understanding that we're all bellends at times. Apart from me, I'm the greatest. Meeple Overboard says, a question for Herr Maddox. That's German for Mr. Maddox. What are some of your biggest musical influences and who got you to pick up the guitar? So musical influences kind of implies I write music, which kind of ain't true. What music do I like? I love Ween. I love Sufjan Stevens. I love Elliott Smith. I love Queens of the Stone Age and Nirvana and Pavement and Public Enemy and De La Soul. Oh, David Moser popping to say hi from California. David, hello, all the way from sunny California. It's very exciting. What was the other half of this question? And who got you to pick up the guitar? Marijuana got me to pick up the guitar. At about the age of 16, I left home. It's a long story, but I had a big contretemps with my mum, and I packed my bags and I left, and I was homeless for a while. And then I found a place to living on the sofa of a friend's place. And we used to smoke weed, and we used to play Super NES. We used to smoke weed, play Super NES, and then I would just sit while other people were playing their Mario Kart Grand Prix, and I would just strum the guitar. And it's that thing, right? Because I was stoned, and when you're stoned, you sort of get trancey. I never got particularly concerned about not being able to hit the chord. And so I just sat there, and after about 3 months, you can do that. And that's basically where I stopped as a guitar player, because I was a singer. I sang in bands at the time. And it's kind of useful if you're a singer, if you sometimes need someone to play 3 chords in a song. It's useful to have a singer who can do that. And I never really got much better than a 3-chord strummer, but, I've never needed to be, really. Crystal's here. Hello, Crystal. How are you? I hope you're well. Hope my weekend is starting off well. It is. It's starting off well. Although, Germany is on a soft lockdown at the moment, so there's no bars open and there's no places to go, so I have to sit alone. But I'm talking to you, lovely people, so it's great. So, David L., my next song was going to be an Elliott Smith song, but he suggested another Elliott Smith song, so I'll play the other Elliott Smith song. I have a friend I went to drama school with. Excuse me. He's actually semi kind of famous now. His name is Vince Nappo. And he was American and super cool. Americans are just super cool. And of course, I was young. I was at university and I didn't know many Americans. And he came with all of this music. Yeah, that works. He came with all of this music, and from him I discovered Rufus Wainwright, and he brought Mutations by Beck, and I listened to that. I'd already heard Mellow Gold, of course. His best friend, he went to university in Bellingham, and his best friend at the time was the lead singer of Death Cab for Cutie, and I remember him saying, "My friend's band is brilliant." And they're called Death Cab for Cutie, and I didn't realize it was a Bonzo Dog reference until many years later. But the name stuck in my head, and then when they got famous, I thought, oh, it's that band that Vince liked. Anyway, he introduced me to Elliott Smith, and I never heard Elliott Smith before. And he introduced me to XO. And there is just something, when you are confronted with something that you fall in love with, it becomes just such an intrinsic part of who you are. And this is what fandom is. You become very protective over this. And I was lucky enough to see Elliott Smith live on his Figure 8 tour before he died. And, that was a real privilege. And whenever I hear an Elliott Smith song now in a film, I'm instantly going to give the film 5 stars. It was like when I was watching that Rick and Morty episode where Summer plays Between the Bars, which was the song I was going to play, actually, plays Between the Bars. And I thought, I really love Rick and Morty, and now they've played an Elliott Smith song. And this song, is it David who requested it? Yeah. This song that David requested, I remember watching the Royal Tenenbaums. Actually, the only film... Oh, no, that was a Sufjan Stevens song, so forget it. No, the only film... Yeah, no, I remember watching the Royal Tenenbaums, and there's the scene where Luke Wilson, cuts his wrists, and this song plays. And after that, I thought, I love the Royal Tenenbaums. It's got an Elliott Smith song in it. And I'm going to see if I can play it. I haven't practiced this tonight, but I've played it loads of times.
Hand on his arm, haystack charm around your neck, strung out and thin, calling some friend, trying to cash some check. He's acting dumb, that's what you've come to expect. Needle in the hay, needle in the hay, needle in the hay, needle in the hay. Wearing your clothes, head down to toes, a reaction to you. So know what he did, you idiot kid, you don't have a clue. Sometimes it just caught in the eye, you're pulling through. Needle in the hay, needle in the hay, needle in the hay, needle in the hay. Now on the bus, nearly touching a sturdy retreat, falling out, sixth and foul, dead sweat in my teeth. Walk, 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 4 more blocks, plus the one in my brain. Downstairs to the man, he's gonna make it all okay. I can't be myself, I can't be myself, and I don't want to talk. Taking the cure so I can be quiet whenever I want. Leave me alone. So leave me alone. You ought to be proud that I'm getting good marks. Needle in the hay, 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 needle in the hay.
Thank you very much. It's Elliott Smith, Needle in the Hay. I wish I could write music like that. I can't. Excellent. What is my opinion on Kingmaking in board? Wait a minute. I hear more than 3 chords in this song. Ben is a dang liar. Yeah, okay. I know about 5 chords, right? So John Shackleton says, what is my opinion on kingmaking in board games? My opinion on kingmaking in board games is that people bloody moan about it far too much. And God, there's nothing more annoying, is there? There's nothing more annoying than when you sat around a table. So I don't win a lot of games. I'm not very good. My mind is not particularly predisposed to that type of thought, which I am the living definition of. You don't have to be good at something to enjoy it because I'm bloody awful. And I know everyone says that, I'm terrible at games, but I really am. And, if Steve, who's watching, would stop being so lazy and actually come to the keyboard and type something in, or maybe he's just using maybe he's sock puppeting through his wife's account. But it's actually nicer to speak to you, Sam, than it is to him anyway. But, he would agree that I am quite awful at games. But so what I do when I realize, which is most of the time that I'm not going to win, I set myself secondary goals. I say, okay, I want to make sure I build this house, or I want to build this building, or get to this thing. I'm not going to win, but I want to do this by the end of the game. It's called managing expectations, which if games have taught me anything, it's that managing expectations is the motto of my life. Ben Maddox, managing expectations. And so I hate that situation where you're sat around a table and you've got this one move which is going to get you your goal, the one thing you're trying to do in the game because you're not going to win, and someone goes, oh, no, you can't do that because if you do that, then that'll happen and that'll happen and you'll win. And it's like, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. I don't do it deliberately to most of the time to make someone else win. This is what I want to do. And I understand it can be frustrating if the ineptitude of someone else results in you losing, but most people don't king make. They might do an action that enables another person to win, but my opinion of kingmaking is that it's a deliberate act. You are deliberately sabotaging someone to make someone else win. And that happens so bloody rarely, I think. I think people generally understand the concept of fairness, and doing that is unfair. And so, yeah, for sure. I think kingmaking is fine because most of the time it isn't kingmaking. And if someone's consciously doing it to get on your nerves, well, they suck, don't they? So, let's have a look. On the Facebook, Marcus Brisman, I don't think he's here. He says, do you think there are themes in board games that are inappropriate? Well, this is an interesting question, isn't it? Because what does that mean? There are things I find distasteful, but I don't think my sense of disgust should dictate whether something is good or not. I certainly don't think I'm clever enough or, discerning enough to be the arbiter of taste. But I think what it is actually I don't think there isn't really anything that's off limits. It's the perspective from which it comes, right? This is the thing. It's the perspective from which it comes. So if you look at a great example is Freedom, the Underground Railroad, right? And people may say, oh, God, board games are my recreation. Do I really want to weigh in on weighty topics like that? But the point is with Freedom, the Underground Railroad is that it's dealing with an abhorrent phase in history, but it's not endorsing that part of history, you see? And so you come from an angle in which you can deal with it. Something like Train from Brenda Romero is also very interesting, although Train is a sort of one-time play thing. I think it's the way themes are dealt with. And, there's the big debate on colonialism. And what I think about the colonialism thing is that I don't think these games necessarily endorse colonialism. What's even slightly worse is that they use colonialism as a backdrop. There's just not a lot of thought there And while I'll play these games and enjoy them, I don't think a link to a website in the rule book is good enough. I think as an artist, you should be brave enough to tackle these things. And as an artist, you should be brave enough to tackle these things from different angles. Proper art reflects real life. And so, there's this, people get very het up when good things are done by bad people and vice versa, right? Yet all the time, bad people do good things and good people do bad things. And there's many motivators towards that. And so are there any themes that are unacceptable? And I'm sure people could write in the stream comments things. Oh, listen to me. I really said, or in the stream comments, where you get your typewriter and then you write stuff in the words and that. I'm sure people could come up with things. But I think part of the role of art is to be confrontational. Part of the role of art is to ask difficult questions. And board games, for me, are absolutely art. And so, I don't think themes are off the table. But again, it's the angle from which you approach them, right? I think my sense of disgust would be evoked by certain things, and I would not find them tasteful. But should they not be made because I find them distasteful? Maybe not, right? And Marcus Briston, he's good, Brisser. He asks a lot of questions. Have you ever been to Sweden? If not, would you like to go here? Now, I've got a story. Strap in, folks. I'm going to open my second beer, and I'm going to use my guitar string tightener thing to open it. There we go. So have I been to Sweden? Yes, I have been to Sweden. So a friend of mine, very nice guy, Portuguese guy, said to me, would you like to go to the north of Sweden to see the Northern Lights? And I said, bloody hell, I would. I've never seen the Northern Lights. And he said, well, there's an Outward Bound centre. There's like a youth hostel in Abisko at the top of Sweden. And you can go there and you can see the Northern Lights. And it's not expensive. Sweden is, the north is famous for being super expensive, but it's not expensive. You can go. And I said, brilliant. And he said, well, just give me some money and I'll sort out everything. I'll book the hostel, I'll book the flights, I'll book the train. So what we were doing is flying from Berlin to Stockholm, having the day in Stockholm, and then taking the night train, an 18-hour train from Stockholm to Abisko in the north, right? And I mean, I love night trains. And we had a sleeper compartment booked and everything. Anyway, so we go to Stockholm, and it's lovely and it's weird. The only beer you can buy from the supermarket is 3%, for instance. That sort of stuff. And it's, and I had a walk around Stockholm, went up to the castle, went to the top of the hill. All that was lovely. And when I had some food and all of this, and then we get onto the train about 10 o'clock at night. And we get to our sleeper cabin, and it's full. And we say to the people, sorry, but we're booked in. And they say, oh, well, so are we. And we're like, oh, God, there's an issue. And one of the people I was with said, I'll go and find the conductor. So they get the conductor. She comes along. And we're saying, well, we've got this issue. It seems that we're double booked and all of this. And I looked down, and my friend had booked the tickets. And I would own up to this had it been me. And I look down and I see that the date on the tickets is for the next day. Well, at this point, we're 40 minutes into the journey. We're in the middle of rural bloody Sweden. Now, if this was Britain, I'm sure the officious people on the trains would go, well, sorry, you've got to get off at the next stop. And I said, well, it's bloody January. You know what I mean? But the woman was so lovely. She said, oh, well, it's been a mistake. You've got the ticket. You've paid for the journey. So you can't sleep in here. So find somewhere to sit. So we went and sat in the bar and we had a couple of drinks. And then this guy, this Swedish guy, big burly guy, said, "Oh, I'm a builder. I'm going to work in a mine up in the middle of Sweden. I've got my own compartment. Come in for a drink." And we thought, "Oh, that's lovely." So we got in and we had a drink, and he's got this whiskey, and we're drinking whiskey, and we're all getting drunk and having a laugh, and he's talking to us about football and all of this. And then suddenly he just starts spouting like the fucking worst racist shit you've ever heard. I mean, look, out of the blue, absolutely astonishing. And so we're like, "Oh, fuck, what do we do?" He's a big bugger as well. So we just sort of go, "Oh, okay, all right. Oh, looks like, we should go to bed and everything." So we got out and we ended up sleeping in the bar. Yeah, I mean, in the bar, the restaurant thing. So we got no sleep. We got to this hostel and it was cloudy for the entire time. And we didn't see the Northern Lights. The night before we arrived and we got talking to some people and said, "Oh, it was amazing. The sky was on fire with the Aurora Borealis." And we're like, "Oh, this is cool." And then the clouds descended and we didn't see a thing. And then we went back. And on the way back, my friend who had messed up the ticket booking, I wake up in the middle of the night in the sleeper because we had our book. He booked the right day back, fortunately. And I see him in the bunk, get onto his knees and just go, and he puked onto his bed. He must have had motion sickness. And then he wrapped up the puke in a sheet, popped it at the bottom of the bed, and then went and slept in the bar. And I slept all night in the smell of vomit. It was incredible. Yeah, the people here are talking about Puerto Rico. And it's interesting. It's interesting. With a lot of these German games, I think you have to think of intention. I think intention is important. There's no intention there to disrespect people. But, someone says, the question is, why do they theme it that way? And sometimes I do think, bloody hell, why have that argument? It absolutely isn't about anything. Why have that argument? And especially a lot of these Euro games, I don't think dealing with the issue of I don't think dealing with the issue of colonialism is a terrible thing. These things need to be talked about. But at the same time, a lot of these Euro games don't. They don't address any of the issues of colonialism for me. And you could, so simply. You don't have to even fall down one side or the other, although I don't see how you couldn't, but still. But you can just raise the issues, and the issues aren't raised, and that seems negligent. It's interesting. Board Game Fangirl, that's Melanie, I believe. She's saying Secret Hitler, it really could have been something else. I have to disagree with you here, because the wonderful thing, actually, I think Secret Hitler is a game. I think it's fine. I think it's way overbalanced towards the liberals, actually. But the thing I like about Secret Hitler is the premise is that through inaction, you enable despicable things to be done, right? And setting it in that period is really, really interesting. And it's been so long since I played it, but I remember at the time just thinking, wow, this is a really interesting dissection of what ideology can do. And I think what's really important, and what you've seen with Britain and America, and the point is, I grew up in a little country town with 3,000 people. I was probably the only lefty in the place, right? And what growing up in that town made me realize is that things like political affiliation don't necessarily make you an awful person. Firstly, with a lot of people, what chance do you have? A completely right-wing media surrounded by traditional opinions that you are soaked in and immersed in every day of the week, and that is your life. And especially, I'm talking about someone who grew up in the 80s and 90s where the internet wasn't ubiquitous. I think sympathy needs to be put across in the sense that I think you need to think that people are a product of their situation. Sure, there are things that need to be dealt with, untackled, and there are things that are unforgivable. I agree with that, but still. But also, people are just trying to get through the bloody day most of the time. They're trying to struggle through their lives as much as anyone. And I think there needs to be an acknowledgement that actually political affiliation is often not a great indicator of how good a person is and how decent they are. And the problem is, our big interaction with people is always through the internet now, and it's their pronouncements on the internet. And the internet is a single issue delivery system. You talk about one thing at a time. So it's very easy to say, it's very easy to say, oh, they think this, therefore that. And I don't, it's such a limited way of thinking about people. And the fact is, we don't do it in our real lives. We deal with our family members who disagree with us on political issues. We understand that there has to be, you can have disagreement, but demonization is just a lack of imagination in my eyes. And I understand in America at the moment how difficult that must be when people admire this despicable fucking human being. And it's you see who he is, and it's almost inexplicable why people would support him. But does that mean that they treat their children badly, their spouses badly, their families badly? Do they not work for their community? And all of the indicators in a normal situation that we would say that's a good person. And I think this is the internet, because it's a single issue delivery system, has made us think of people as single issue people. And the latest sort of phrase I hear bandied about to justify a lack of tolerance. And I understand the Karl Popper, we can't tolerate intolerance. I agree. Still, is that these people disagree with my core beliefs, therefore fuck them. And the point is, do they? I think you need to speak to them, because actually the transient nature of political discourse, I don't think has any relation to your core beliefs. Most people are just trying to do the best they can by their family. Most people are trying to do the best they can by their community, and they're trying to get through bloody life in the best way they know how. Now, the best way they know how might be wrong, and certainly might disagree with the best way that you know how, but at the same time, what is the end game here? Calling people assholes is going to make them re-entrench in their position. It's not going to make them reevaluate what they're thinking. As I said in my piece on Essen, you should go and see it. It's on the YouTube channel. Games, for instance, give us a common ground, and we would be negligent not to cross that common ground and meet in the middle, I reckon. So, do we have any more questions? There might be one more question, then I'll... Oh, okay. Brisser, I said top 5 movies, which is... top 5 movies. So Board Game Girl says it's such a majority culture thing. I'm not going to get into this discussion now, but the level of chauvinism from people on both sides of the spectrum about the West and this idea that Western hegemony is a real thing is astonishing, and I might write something about it. We'll see. But top 5 movies. So I think the best film ever made, because it is, I think, the last sort of 2 movies that were written in the grand tradition of grand tragedy. You know, the classic sort of Greek thing of hamartia, that sort of central fault in a character that will lead you to an act of hubris, which will eventually result in the act of nemesis, which is throughout Greek theatre, which is throughout Shakespeare, especially, you know, Elizabethan and Jacobean theatre. And Elizabethan theatre is better because it's less prurient and it's, you know, less about stabbing people. It's more about ideas. Is the first 2 parts of The Godfather, and I think The Godfather Part 2 is quite the most astonishing dissection of what misery can do to a person, and especially when they decide, I am going to cut myself off from the world. So there's that. I think Young Frankenstein is probably the most glorious film ever made. Young Frankenstein is absolutely astonishing. It is hilarious from beginning to end. It's eminently quotable. Every performance is perfect. I think Mel Brooks has done an awful lot of crap, but he did The Producers, he did Blazing Saddles, and he did Young Frankenstein. And for that, he should be remembered as one of the greatest filmmakers ever. I love This Is Spinal Tap. Absolutely astonishing. It is the best mockumentary, with Best in Show just a hair behind it. I like, let me think now. I think The Exorcist is astonishing. It's an absolutely glorious film, truly brilliant. And let me think of something more modern, something I've seen recently. Oh yeah, probably my favorite performance in cinema. I love films that evoke sort of loneliness and characters that seem lost in the wash of the world. And the character in this is someone who is completely lost, and he expresses that sense of loss and mourning through anger. And I recognize that default response so much. And that's The Master from P.T. Anderson. Joaquin Phoenix's performance in that film is breathtaking. And if you haven't seen the movie, go and watch it. It's probably my favorite performance in cinema. And he is fucking wonderful in everything he does. Even a sort of, you know, paper thin piece of shit like Joker, he's absolutely mind-blowing. So go and watch The Master. So, and with that, I'm going to play one more song. I hope you enjoy it. I think I've got to put my crappy capo. If the guitar sounds dodgy, it's because my capo's not very good and it doesn't really work, and I need to buy a new one. I will do it before the next stream. All right, so let me look. I think I've got to put a capo on the guitar. I do have to put a capo on. Okay, let's have a look. Eesh. It doesn't like the low strings. Come on, baby. That will do. So this is a classic pop hit from the days, and this is I liked him in Joker too. I think the film is absolutely shallow rubbish. It says nothing. It's a constant riff of 70s memes, but he is astonishing in it. Absolutely astonishing. That one shot, the sort of money shot where his eyes are just completely sad and then he smiles and yet he looks completely heartbroken. Brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant in that other P.T. Anderson movie as well, where he's the sort of stoner. Absolutely amazing. And he's absolutely amazing in I'm Still Here, which I think is a very underrated movie. I think his performance is brilliant. So this is a top pop hit from probably one of the best singers around. And this is crazy. I can't remember the guy's name because I know his name's not Gnarls Barkley. Put it in the chat.
I remember when I lost my mind. There was something so pleasant about that place.
I've got to start again because I got it wrong.
I remember when I lost my mind. There was something so pleasant about that place. Even your emotions had an echo in so much space. And when you're out there without care, yeah, I was out of touch. But it wasn't because I didn't know enough. I just knew too much. 'Cause that made me crazy. That made me crazy. That made me crazy. Bradley. Now I hope you're having the time of your life, but think twice. That's my only advice.
The E is always going to sound rubbish.
Come on now, who do you think you are? Ha ha ha, well bless my soul. You really think you're in control? Well, I think you're crazy. I think you're crazy. I think you're crazy. Just like me. Heroes have the heart to lose their lives on a limb. And all I remember is thinking, I wanna be like them. Ever since I was little, it looked like fun. And in no coincidence I've come. And I can die when I'm done. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe you're crazy. Maybe we're crazy. Probably.
I need to do capo. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Well, with that, I did not like The Irishman. I enjoyed The Irishman, but bloody hell, it was long. And bloody hell, that digital de-aging was rubbish. Uncanny Valley, out of the wazoo. And most people have gone. Brilliant. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. An out-of-tune guitar means that people leave. But thank you very much for watching. And I'm going to do this again at some point, so I'll speak to you later. Rock and roll. Now it's the awkward bit. You'll see this on every stream. It's the awkward bit where people are looking for the end broadcasting. And they click it, and then sometimes they just stand looking confused at the camera. And then sometimes they have